Welcome back to Seriously Funny. I'm your host, Mashnor Kabir, and I listen to lo-fi. This week we talk about one of the hardest lessons that I've been forced to learn over my years. This is a lesson that kind of sucks to learn. It's like learning about climate change and how we're destroying the world. It's not exactly fun, but it's true. And if we learn it and feel bad now, we can save ourselves a lot of pain later, or at least so we hope. And so this week I got a haircut. You can see that. If you can see that. If you're watching this, thank you. Go listen. Oh wait, if you're listening to this, thank you. If you're watching this, go listen. YouTube doesn't pay me, okay? But Anchor, they do. So go listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or you know what? Go watch on YouTube because I work hard on it. I don't care either way, really. Thanks for watching. Anyways, PC is also done. You can, if you do watch that, we can shift the camera a bit. I don't know how much of it I can get in view. There's the MacBook. You can see me recording. Graphics card. There's a 3080 in there. Yeah, I'll do the specs in a moment. Let's get that back up and yeah. Very fun, very rainbow puke. I hope you like that. It has an Intel i5-12600K 12th gen, all their like Intel chip. There's a Lian Li 240mm Galahad cooler in black. There's a strimmer cables for the motherboard extensions. 32 gigabytes of Trident G-Skill 3600 CL. I want to say 10. It might be CL16 RAM. I only got 32 gigabytes really just because I wanted to fill the 4 slots. That was really the reason. And then, of course, the piece de resistance is the EVGA RTX 3080. Finally, the MSRP cost came back, and so it was under $900. I got it on Newegg because I went to order it from EVGA, but their shipping was like $70, and Newegg had free shipping. I have no idea why, but all in the Lian Li Landcool 205 mesh, I believe. Yeah, it's pretty great, pretty nice. My friend helped me do some undervolting and overclocking, and we got it to good temperatures with really good performance, and I'm pretty happy with where it is. I don't remember what frequency the chip is running at. I think it's 4 point something gigahertz, and then the card also a bit undervolted and overclocked, but the temperatures are great. It runs Genshin perfectly, which is the biggest thing I need. Runs Apex really well. I'm at like 140 frames in firing range. I haven't actually played a game. And then Cyberpunk, it also runs that fairly well, like 50 to 80 frames, which that's with everything turned up, RTX on, like the graphics are just pumped really effing high. So I don't expect that many effing frames. I should probably turn some things down because there's some things I don't care about. But anyways, that's for later. But yeah, I love the RGB, love the colors, everything. Motherboard is really good. The cables, I think, were managed generally well. There's some that stick out, but it doesn't really matter. And yeah, overall, pretty super duper happy with it. And, hopefully when school starts, I'm able to use it somewhat instead of just being busy all day. But, we will see. But yeah, when the podcast, maybe we should do that. I'll try that next week. Today, I also made double brewed coffee. This is kind of nice. So I need to learn more about roasts and beans. So like I make pour over coffee. And so we use grounds, and I don't do any, like I just buy the raw beans and grind them. I don't do that because that's too much work, and I have to buy other stuff and I don't want to. But like there's medium roast, light roast, dark medium, dark, and then those give you different flavors. And then I just learned about this double brewing, and today I use ice cream instead of milk. I use some milk, but I just put ice cream in there, and then the coffee. It's pretty good. It's like this thick mixture. It's not really a milkshake completely, but it has this milkshake-esque sort of, it's thicker, and it has that coffee flavor because I double brewed it today. Very nice. We haven't talked about anything useful at the moment yet, so we should do that. And that lesson, the one I was talking about before, we'll just say it right here at the gate, is that you can't help someone who doesn't want to help themselves. Someone, or some of you have learned this the hard way, just as I have. Some of you have come across this lesson but stubbornly refused to learn it, just as I used to. And I've been there, trust me. Others of you have really tried helping anyone or talking to someone about getting help, and you've never come across this. Maybe there's a chance that everyone you talk to about getting help were super receptive to the idea. There's also a chance that you just you never focus your energy on helping people. That's also cool. We all have our different things, and so not everyone's up to that. It's hard, honestly. And it's extremely a sucky situation. It just sucks every time this happens. There's a ton of people out there that have an issue. Maybe it's addiction, maybe it's alcoholism, a physical or a mental illness. And they refuse to get help or be helped. They refuse detox, they refuse rehab, they refuse to see a doctor, they refuse to help themselves. And seeing this happen, especially to someone you care about, is awful. It will make you mad, sad, and all around feel bad. I hope you like that rhyme, but that was a good one. It can really suck. And you see this person that you care about obliterate their health. And you're thinking about what you can do to do something about it, or even just like get them to realize that they should do something about it. But the lesson is really important. It's one that doctors probably learn pretty often, and especially just through experience. And it sucks. And a lot of times the thing is that other than how it makes you feel, which we'll talk about in a minute, this really does hold. The first step in helping yourself is wanting to help yourself. That's always step one. If someone doesn't think they have a problem, then in their reference frame, they don't have a problem. I know people that I've helped for like years. I helped them for like multiple years because of how much they went through, and working through everything took a long time. And for these people, one of them, they went through a lot of things. They've seen loved ones of theirs die. They've seen they've been through a lot. And the first question I asked them before I ever tried to help them with anything at all, I heard them out, I listened to them, I asked questions. But when I actually before I gave them anything to do or had actually helped walk through and work through the issues, the first question was, do you want to be happy? And I've talked about this before, but that question, I know it seems stupid, but it's really important, because that lets me know if someone actually wants to go forward with the things in their life and get better and work on it. Because there's a chance that they can't say yes in good faith to that question, in which case I can't do anything for them. And I know that, and at this point I've learned not to waste my time trying. And so that's a problem, right? If someone, doesn't think they have a problem, but they're harming their health, again, it's a reference frame thing. To them, technically, they don't have a problem, right? And if they say they don't, some people can really argue, do they have a problem then? It's very rare that, very, very rare that someone will accidentally do things that help their state or their issues, right? Like, it's not like someone who's overweight and doesn't think it's an issue will just start walking around the neighborhood because it looks nice outside or something, right? Like, it's possible, yeah, completely. But it's just not very likely at all. It's probably not going to happen. A lot of times their negative behavior prevent positive ones, especially since you think you have, or especially if you think you don't have a problem, like really, really, really deep down in there, I think, or at least I want to think, I had an episode about that everyone knows what's going on within them. I want to believe that, like somewhere deep down. Admitting that, accepting that, that's the hard part for some people. But like when you're, say, overweight, you are less likely to start exercising because then you're solving the problem, right? Like if you're unwilling to admit that you have a problem, you wouldn't need to exercise, right? If you didn't think that you were overweight, maybe you'd say, I don't need to exercise, right? Obviously, that's not true. Exercise in itself, regardless of the weight benefits, some people are going in there to gain muscle, right? But regardless of what you would do exercise for, it's healthy in terms of just your cardiovascular fitness and keeping it up, right? So even if it's not the gym, like taking walks, running, etc., just for your heart health and your lung health, it doesn't matter how fat you are or aren't. That's not the problem. But just doing the exercise is good for you in a number of ways, and that's why you should exercise, really. Obviously, if you're overweight, like myself, then that's another reason. But generally, even if you are a healthy person who's not overweight, maybe you have a good metabolism, good genetics, whatever, even then, exercise is good just in the nature of what it is. That's the hard part for some people, admitting that they, the thing going on within them, right? So like I said, I think deep down everyone knows, but admitting that, accepting that, that's really tough a lot of the time. But again, when you say overweight, you're less likely to start exercising, you're starving the problem. But because that would mean that you're admitting to the fact that you have a problem, or are admitting to the fact that in this case, you're overweight. And a lot of people are really stubborn. People refuse to admit when they're wrong. They refuse to concede something that may make them seem weak or may open themselves up to being judged. Why are people more likely to be stubborn about these things than accepting? Because of a great thing called identity protective cognition, the inconsistency avoidance tendency, pain avoidance, and the backfire effect. And the fact that the same part of your brain that feels physical pain is the same one that's involved in that turns on when you're rejected, or in this case, told you're wrong. Overall, people want to avoid pain more than anything. And a lot of times, although it seems really stupid, and looking at it from the outside, the pain of admitting you're wrong or admitting you have a problem seems more painful than the actual you're facing. It seems that way to us. Our brains are not exactly always wired in some super optimal, incredible way. And this is one of those situations for a reason, right? It came from something. And look, sometimes people aren't ready. Sometimes you really do need some time before you want to get better. Take grief, for example. Sure, someone like me, a brick wall, a robot, very logical dude, engineer, I might say that the quicker you get over something, the quicker you can move on with your life. But I understand that it's not that simple for everyone. Not everyone's a brick wall. And a lot of times you do need some time after someone, say, passes away, or even if you get depressed, it's not easy to merely, quote, want to feel better, end quote, or at least that quickly. It takes some time sometimes. Usually that comes when you become really tired, when something breaks more or less. That's when the pain of that issue that you're going through becomes so apparent that you can't deny it any further. That's generally when people want to get better. When it gets to like a point. And it's just like, it's really like they can't function. Like they can see just in front of their eyes. They can't deny it that they're just not functioning in the same way they used to. And they have no other excuse. But yeah, if it breaks you, that's, when the pain that you're going through now is worse than the perceived pain of rejection, that's generally when people will admit it, right? Because then that threshold of fear of rejection goes away. Psychology's fun in it. The next part of this is denial, which we already talked about a little bit, but a lot of people deny that they have an issue completely. More than simply not being able to help someone when they don't want to be helped, sometimes they completely disregard the fact that they have an issue at all. And we point this out because it's not always the case. A lot of times people know that they have an issue, they just don't want to do anything to fix it. Is it weird? Yes. Does it make sense? Not really. Have I been there? For sure. Does it make any more sense? Nope. It probably goes back to identity protective cognition. A lot of times we become so engrossed in something, depression, drugs, or something of the sort, and what happens is that we spend so much of our time and lives with this thing that we become incredibly afraid of what our lives look without that thing. Admittedly, saying, I don't want to get better because I didn't know who I would be if I wasn't depressed, is not only extremely edgy, but very, very cringy. But it makes sense. A lot of people place incredible value and importance on their sense of self, and if they can't ascertain who they'll be after something happens, they're not going to be very likely to go about that thing. For this too, the way that people usually get over this is when the pain gets bad enough that they don't care anymore what the cost will be or what they'll be like. When the pain reaches a certain threshold, which varies from person to person, that threshold varies from person to person, then it doesn't matter anymore what will happen to that sense of self because it's already been so shaken. And then you're really going to change. You'll do what it takes. I think that for people who aren't in denial, but rather they merely aren't ready for help, they can be a lot more open to being convinced. But even then, you can't help these people if they don't want to be helped. Even if you think you can, even if you give them breathing exercises or something, they might do them. It's possible. A lot of times they won't, but they might. But a lot of times, especially for mental things, so like mental exercises, even if research says that it will help, they won't work if they like those mental exercises, the breathing exercises, they might work a little bit because there is a physiological component to it that just happens. But a lot of times they won't work the same because placebo can work either way, right? If you believe something's going to work, it will work. We've seen that. We've showed that on this podcast through tons of different like manners of evidence. And we've talked about it many times. And maybe one day I'll go look through some of the literature there and give a deeper dive into that. But we've talked about placebo. However, placebo not only can make things work, but it can go the other way, right? It can make things not work. If you're told this pill will do nothing and it is supposed to do something, it will do nothing, right? It's the negative consequence. And so that's a chance. So if you do these breathing exercises and you don't want it to help you, then it won't, right? Like again, so to one extent it might, and sometimes that little bit's good enough, but if you don't want it, it won't. And that's the problem with mental stuff, right? For exercise, that's physiological. You can probably dilute it a little bit by not caring or not wanting it or negative placeboing yourself, but generally, like, you're moving your body, those muscles are going to, like, they're going to rip, the microfracture is going to happen, all these things are going to happen. Like, it doesn't matter how much you want it or not, right? Like, you can't placebo yourself out of a broken arm, but exercise won't break your arm, fine. Maybe it will. But where was I? Yeah, if they don't want to do something, even if they kind of work, again, the other point is that even if you give them these exercises and tell them to do these things and they do it, and it does help them a little bit, even if it does, there's a much higher probability at a relapse. And that can go for way more than just drugs. Like even depression and stuff, you can reach a high point, but then go straight back down just in a day, less than a day. In which case, that's bad, right? You use a lot of progress and then it all regresses. It's not to say that the progress was useless, because just having climbed up the stairs one time makes it a lot easier to do it another time, and it gives you a proof of concept. But then of course, again, there's denial. We already talked about this one, like I said, but of course, this is when you refuse the fact that you have an issue. Like I said earlier, I believe that everyone somewhere deep inside them is aware of the issue, is aware of every issue, also a little bit aware of the solution, to be honest. It's just that facing it and or admitting it is really hard for some people. If you want to get into denial, there's different contexts in which denial exists. Sometimes it's trauma-based, sometimes it's, but in the case of like general mental problems in a non-like, you really just need to go to a doctor level of problems, then, for like depression, anxiety, like if you have schizophrenia, psychosis, that's a bit different. If you have cancer or a disease, that's a bit different. Go see your doctor. No breathing exercise. Breathing exercise probably won't help you. Maybe, they can a little bit, but, these are non-medically, how would you say, non-medically, you don't need to waste a hospital bed on some issues, right? That's the issues that we're really discussing here in terms of saying you do or don't have. I guess, honestly, addiction is more of an issue, but yeah, you get the point. All right, I don't need to sit here and try to effing qualify everything. You guys have brains. The last part here is the part that everyone who learned this lesson in their lives wishes they could know the answer to. That is, what can you do about this? What can you do when someone doesn't want to get help or be helped? And that's something that I looked into. I found other solutions, but give me a moment. And then there's, I will just read the script. Let me finish it. I'll split this into the denial case and the non-denial case. Generally, what's the truth for both of them, though, starting with just both cases? And this is the most important lesson that needs to be learned in tandem when you finally understand that you can't help someone that doesn't want to help, or that doesn't want to help themselves, or that doesn't want help at all. This lesson that there's another lesson that should be learned with that one, but a lot of times it's not, and it causes you a lot of pain. And so what this one is regardless of what happens to someone, if they do not want to be helped, it is not your fault. If you know an addict that overdoses after you continuously urge them to get help, if you did everything you could and the problem was that they didn't want assistance, then it is not your fault. Whether they are or aren't in denial, if someone doesn't want help and something happens to them because they didn't ever seek help, it is not your fault. And you should never, ever hold yourself to that. That guilt, it can eat at the helpers of the situation, the people that want to help the other person, the one that has an issue. And I think one day that it would actually be really good to talk about the helpers, but this guilt, that's not your guilt to bear. It's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. There was nothing you could have done at all. If someone didn't want help, it's not your fault. You can't magically change their minds. We don't have that technology yet. You can't do anything. You can ask, you can plead, you can beg, for God's sake. But if they don't want it, they don't want it. It doesn't matter. Even if they agree to it, even if they agree to say rehab or something, if they come out and they didn't care, they're going to start using. It doesn't matter what rehab does. Every now and then there's a chance that they go in not expecting a change, and it does. But the probability is too low for that. But their actions are not your fault. A lot of times, if there's someone close to you, their actions can have consequences on your life. Yes, that's possible. And whenever that happens, it's really depressing and that sucks. But it's not your fault. It might end up being your responsibility if, again, they shatter something in your life and you have to pick up the effing pieces. But it's not your fault. And generally, it's not your responsibility. It's up to them. It's their life. It's their choices. You have to respect that, and you have to respect them for what they did, even if you don't respect the actions, and even if you don't agree with the things they said, did, or how they didn't listen. And it's fine to be angry at them. That makes sense, to be honest. But it's not your fault, right? That guilt is not yours to bear. Don't hold on to it. There's no way that you can ever make that guilt go away, because it's not meant to be yours. It's not meant to be your guilt. There's no solution that you can do to deal with it. The solution is never feel it in the first place. It's not yours. Throw it away. I know you can feel bad. I know you can feel bad. Trust me, I've been there, but it's not your fault. It's not up to you. It's not as crude as it may sound, as uncouth as it may sound. It's not your problem. You can only do what you can do. And the other thing is, I mean, you could probably be a bit annoying. This one's a bit more controversial. This one doesn't always work at all, because it might make the person not want to talk to you. Or even worse, it'll make them think that if they do admit they have an issue, or they say they want assistance, you'll give them the patented "I told you so," even if you won't. You don't want to make them afraid that you will. You don't want to make them be afraid of judgment. And so persistence, or more specifically annoyance, is you have to be very careful with it. It has to be done in a very non-judgmental manner, in a way as possible, right? So you have to make them know, this is what I want, and I'm going to make sure you understand my opinions, and I'm going to tell you my opinions, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to change the way I treat you regardless. It's just that I really wish you would do this. And that applies for both cases, really. Just don't be annoying and rude and mean. That doesn't really work. But being persistent it might help a little bit, right? You plant a seed in someone's brain and you keep watering it, it might help sprout something at some point. You want to make sure they get tired of your nagging in a way that makes them want to change and listen to you, or you don't want to make them get tired of your nagging in a way that doesn't make them want to talk to you anymore, because then you can't do anything at all of your power completely out the window then, and also you'd lose someone, both of which kind of aren't good. Now we'll start with the people in denial. We'll start with the denial case. If someone is in denial, your best bet is trying to probably create a situation where, like we said earlier, it's very hard to deny the fact that there's a problem. It's just, there's some situations that can transpire that someone will open their eyes and be like, wow, yeah, I can't really blame this on anything else now, can I? Now, I say that you should create a situation. But honestly, this isn't a situation that can be created very easily, because honestly, these situations are the ones where people dance the line between life and death normally. And this is, right? So a drug addict will admit they have a problem when they overdose and, they're brought back with Narcan or something. A depressed person will admit, they have a problem when they're close to actually inflicting harm upon themselves or others. You get the point. Obviously, there's a lot of times that it's too late by this point, right? So sometimes, if you know Kevin Hines, he's a big mental health advocate. He was someone who jumped off the Golden State Bridge, and now he goes around preaching, mental health and awareness for that stuff. And in his story, he said that the moment his feet cleared the railing, he regretted his decision. He didn't want to die anymore. He was very, very wanting to live. But at that point, for him, super lucky. The guy, complete recovery, he's really fit, and he obviously has a great message, and he has a great life where he's trying his best to help people. But it could have been the case, and it probably is for a number of people. I think the Golden Gate Bridge actually has a net under it now, so jumping off is actually considerably harder now. But before that net was installed, a lot of people jumped off that bridge. And how many other people felt the same thing he did and lived? Very few. That might all get cut out. I have no idea. Might get cut out of the video version. I don't think YouTube would like that. But yeah, like I said, obviously there's a lot of times where it's too late by then, and it sucks. The only other thing is that the other thing is what I said previously. Oh, that's not what I want. Get back here. Script. PCs went to sleep. Make sure that they feel like you won't see them any differently when or if they do admit to anything or admit to whatever their issue is. Make sure they understand that they won't be judged. They won't be given not an unironic "I told you so." I think some people have relationships where saying "I told you so" would be funny and everyone would laugh. But for me, people that know me, they know I'm going to say "I told you so," but I'm not going to mean anything by it. It's just a joke. But make sure that they feel like they won't be seen any differently or treated any differently. And people don't want to be treated differently. They don't want pity. They don't want you to be nicer or meaner. They just want you to be as you are, generally. Every now and then you have to be a bit nicer, but it's different. Yeah. So just make sure they feel comfortable all the time. As for people who aren't in denial, honestly, for these people, again, make sure they feel accepted and loved regardless of anything. And that's probably a big piece of advice. And here we need to take a more cognitive approach, honestly. We need to, and I think this is a strange but right way to put it, we need to pitch the idea of getting better to them. Our goal is to convince them to get better. We need to market the idea to them. To convince them that they'll be better off if they work on their juju than if they don't. And a lot of times this is dealing with that issue of making sure that their fears and apprehensions are addressed, right? So if you pitch a marketing thing, if you pitch a new product, one aspect of that pitch will be addressing potential drawbacks and addressing potential fears and apprehensions, even in product marketing, right? I'm doing my product management class right now. And any fear of, not knowing who they'll become if they change, or, not knowing what will happen, being afraid of risks for physical illnesses. It's fully possible that treatment may come with physical risks, but we need to convince them that those physical risks are better than, say, dying. Yeah. In the end, remember that nothing is your fault. Again, I'm just going to harp on that again. Above everything, above all of that, honestly, for every case here, love, sympathy, and acceptance of someone is the best that you can do for them. At least I believe that. Again, I harp on this point. Do not make them feel pressured or make them too upset. And sometimes it might work, but the probability isn't high enough that it can be recommended. You can do it very surgically in a very specific way. If you know someone well enough, you can hit certain thresholds and dance a few lines, but that's not something I can teach because it's very person to person and it's not universal and it's really hard and it's just not recommended. Don't do it. Don't try it. It's a bad idea. And honestly, it will probably cause the opposite to happen. But it just love and acceptance will always work better in helping someone change than hatred and vitriol. That's just in my experience. At least change for the better. Some people get super motivated when someone says they can't do something. And you know what? If that reverse psychology works for the person you're dealing with, you can give it a shot. But you know, caring about someone and just making sure that you accept them for who they are at all times, that'll help them be way more okay with being different. Like even if they think that going through with solving their issues will make them a different person, if they know that you're going to accept them regardless of who they are, then that it doesn't really matter. Right? They could change as much as they want, and as long as you see them the same and treat them the same, if they're really close to you and they really like you, then that's all. That's sometimes all it'll take, just caring. The last thing I'll say is that it is technically possible to manipulate someone into wanting to help themselves. It has arguable ethics, right? Because on one hand, you're making someone want to help themselves. On the other hand, manipulation is never really seen in high light. And teaching someone how to do this may have some very negative consequences. That's not something that I will be teaching here because it is a very neutral power that can be used for very good things, but it can also be used for very bad things. And I don't want to give any manner of opportunity for the latter at all. So I'm not going to be talking about that here or probably ever. That's just not something to put out in public, in my opinion. So I just don't want to do that, at least not at this moment, because I don't think I have the capacity to do it in a way that I think would do it justice and keep it safeguarded against negative usage. But it's not something that should be attempted at all for most people. Really 99.9% of people. It's a bad idea. No one should do it, honestly. It's just, yeah. It is possible that if someone is forced into a treatment, for example, rehab, maybe they can find their drive to change there. It's possible because they realize that it's fine if they get clean. But again, it's a possibility, but it's not a given at all. And I'm just going to try to cover all the bases. So forcing someone into change, that's, if you're a parent, technically if your kid's under 18, you can force them into rehab. Maybe that's a move. I don't know if that is. It might make them trust you less. It's really hard to argue that one because you flip a coin every time. Unless you're extremely massive brain and you know how everyone's going to react to everything. Generally, love, acceptance, it's not your fault. Try to get in front of people, be persistent in a very non-judgmental way. Those are going to be the general advice that I'll give if you come across this situation. But speaking of covering bases, I started reading Oyasumi Punpun. It's not bad. It's pretty solid. Yeah, built the PSE. You already saw that. I started my summer marketing class, which is it's not very hard at all. Maybe it's because it just started. Been through 2 classes and it's Memorial Day on Monday, so no class. But overall, not bad. There's going to be a project, which will be like the biggest thing in the class, and I don't think it'll be rough, and the material is pretty simple to grasp. It all makes sense. There's some things that are really simple, but it's just remembering to do those things, or I think like the biggest thing that we're being taught here. So like the professor said in class for chapter 2, which was like a business strategy, like marketing strategy. A lot of companies just don't do this. They don't sit down and make a strategy. They're always just like trying to do stuff without a plan at all. And I mean, a lot of companies do well, right? Like it works. It's just that it's less efficient, and it makes it so your potential is not met, right? So your potential increase in revenue and your potential increase in profit or your potential increase in conversions, whatever your goal is, they're just not met in the manner that they could be met without the planning. And, we know this with like to-do lists and stuff, right? I used to not be into it, or like writing an outline for your essays or something. There are times when, sometimes you just got to do it, whatever. Like if it's small enough, if it's not that big an issue, you're going to waste way more time to try to like make an outline, make a plan. But generally, if you're doing bigger projects, and obviously at a company, they're all big projects, you should be planning these things out. It makes everything easier for everyone. It lets everyone know where to go. It lets everyone know what to look for and what to look at. They know what's important, what's not important. And so it helps a lot of things, but remembering, like doing it, it's honestly like really simple. Make a plan, look at your target audience. How are you going to do that? How do you bring value to these different people? Makes sense. All makes sense. It's just like, remember to do it. That's the biggest thing. And obviously that you can do it well, you can do it bad, but anyways, PC, very colorful, very speedy, marketing class, not bad. It plays Genshin like a charm. Big shout out to my friend who helped me build it. It means a lot to me, buddy, if you're listening or watching this. Big happy with it. I really hope that when school starts, it doesn't completely make it so I'm busy and I can't use it. But marketing class is pretty chill. And I have a video out on sleep deprivation when you see this, and I also should have a video out on Notion properties, which I will be editing in a day or two. What else we got? Properties. Hopefully by the time that you're watching this, both of those videos are out. Honestly, I should have said something about the sleep deprivation video in the last episode, but I forgot, but it's out. It was out 2 weeks ago, out right now. At least I think so. Maybe I should go check. I checked. It's out. But yeah, thank you for listening and or watching this episode. I will talk at you next week. Much love. Get help. Peace.